some reason, whenever certain grown men grab a microphone in 2026, they can't seem to stop rapping about the same woman who told them no a decade ago. Wait, run that back. A decade. A whole 10 years of albums, alter egos, ghostwriter rumors, private jet meltdowns, and side pages doing overtime on the internet. And this man still can't put Rihanna's name down and walk away from the studio in peace. Sweetheart, cousin, listen close, because the internet has officially been set on fire, and this time it wasn't a leak, it wasn't a Reddit thread, it wasn't some anonymous burner account. It was A$AP Rocky himself, sitting across from Jason Lee for 2 full hours, finally saying out loud what half the culture has been whispering since the last Kendrick verse cooled off. Tighten your seatbelt, because we are about to walk through every single receipt Rocky dropped, every jab Rihanna slid into her Instagram story, and every crack in Drake's armor that just got exposed on camera in front of the whole world. Now let me set the table properly, because the tempo of this story matters. Rocky did not stumble into that interview by accident. He walked in with a #1 album under his belt, a wife who just backed it up on him in the middle of Barbados, 2 kids at home, a movie career humming quietly in the background, and a 10-year-long shadow named Drake still following him from song to song. He did not ambush anybody. He sat down. He crossed his legs. He grinned. And then, with the calmest voice you've heard on that couch in years, he opened the door on everything the culture has been begging him to address. A$AP Rocky did not raise his voice. A$AP Rocky did not curse anybody out. A$AP Rocky did what the smartest villains in the movies do. He smiled first, and then he let the truth do the damage for him. Folks close to the room are saying Rocky and his team knew exactly what this interview was going to become the moment the cameras started rolling. This wasn't a promo run. This wasn't an album cycle. This was a public settlement. And the first casualty on the table was Drake. By the paperwork floating around online, A$AP Rocky spent nearly 20 minutes of that 2-hour sit-down dismantling the narrative that Drake has been quietly funding for years. That whole idea that Rocky was some side character in a Rihanna story that Drake was still writing. Chilly, that narrative got shredded the moment Rocky opened his mouth, and I'm going to walk you through every single line, every single sneer, every single grin, piece by piece. But before we dive into the Rocky Drake surgery, we have to talk about what Rihanna did the night before that interview dropped, because timing is everything in a war like this, and this woman timed it like a Broadway director. Rihanna posted a video from what looked like a club in Barbados. She was out with Rocky. She was in the middle of the dance floor. She was backing it up on him. Publicly, unapologetically, and, honestly, joyfully. And that alone would have been fine. They have kids. They have a life. She is allowed to enjoy her own husband. But Rihanna didn't stop there. She added a second post, a shorter one, a colder one, with a man standing in the background pretending not to look and a caption that read, verbatim, "My ex in the studio." Yes, she said it out loud. She put it in writing. She posted it to the entire planet. And every single soul with Wi-Fi understood exactly who that caption was aimed at. Moving on though, because this is where it gets sticky, I want you to notice how the internet responded to Rihanna's post, because the response tells you everything you need to know about the smear machine that Rocky spent his whole interview describing. Instead of the world laughing along with Rihanna, instead of the culture giving her a moment of grown woman comedy, a very specific section of the internet started tearing her apart. Why can't she move on? Why is she trolling Drake? Why can't she grow up? Cousin, do you hear how backwards that is? A woman posts one caption, and suddenly she's the obsessed one, while a grown man has been dedicating verses, hooks, bridges, and entire deluxe editions to her body of work for nearly 10 straight years, and nobody blinks. That imbalance is not accidental. That imbalance is the whole game Rocky sat down to expose. Which brings us to the moment that broke Twitter in half. Jason Lee looked Rocky in the eye and asked him the question everyone has been waiting years to hear a real answer to. You took his girl. And A$AP Rocky, with a smile that could sell a Louis Vuitton campaign, leaned in and said, and I quote as closely as memory allows, "I didn't take his girl. But it's like football. If you fumble, and the star player picks it up, you can't really be mad." Cold, unreal. That one sentence right there, the football line, is the most cinematic diss delivered without a microphone in 3 years. Rocky did not need Metro Boomin. Rocky did not need a producer tag. Rocky did not need 8 bars and a hook. He needed one metaphor, one grin, and one afternoon on Jason Lee's couch, and the entire narrative flipped. But we can't stop there, because right behind that football line was something the algorithm has been quietly ignoring, and I need y'all locked in for this piece. Rocky said the words smear campaign out loud. He said them clearly. He said them without flinching. And then, and this is the part the Drake fan pages have been scrambling to bury, He specifically tied the phrase to the same behavior Drake accused Kendrick Lamar of during their war 2 years ago. Do you understand what Rocky just did? He caught Drake in the exact hypocrisy the rest of the culture has been documenting since 2024. Drake once claimed a smear campaign was launched against him. Rocky now says Drake is the one running smear campaigns. And here is the wildest part. Rocky said it without ever raising his voice, without ever using a slur, without ever crossing a line that would get the clip banned. He said it the way a lawyer says it in a deposition. Calm, precise, fatal. Wait, hold up, do what? Yes, that's what he did. And insiders who watched the raw footage before it got trimmed for the public cut are saying the version we saw is the edited down, PR-approved version. Whispers out the block say the unaired footage has Rocky going even deeper, connecting more dots, naming more middlemen, and describing exactly how these anonymous websites keep appearing, exactly how these hip-hop pages get their timelines, exactly who is paying whose invoice. But we're only going to speak on what actually aired, because the Drake defenders are going to demand it, and we're going to give it to them, line by line. Let's talk about that fight question, because this is the part that got clipped up wrong on TikTok, and I need to correct the record before we move forward. Jason Lee asked Rocky, straight up, would you fight Drake? Rocky said no. But, and this is the world missed, Rocky said no to celebrity boxing, not to a fight. He literally said, on camera, not on no celebrity shit. He don't want to see me. Bare knuckle, like the Irish. Now cousin, do you understand what that means in street language? He wasn't declining a confrontation. He was declining a payday. He was telling the world that if Drake actually wanted the smoke, it would not be inside a ring. It would not be inside a live stream monetized by 2 crypto sponsors and a boxing promoter, and it would definitely not be inside a Netflix documentary. It would be head-to-head, off camera, off the grid. And then Rocky said the 7 words that turned into a headline within 4 minutes. He don't want to see me. Say it slower. He don't want to see me. Rocky put the ball in Drake's court, live on national television, and Drake has not touched that ball since. Now, the beautiful part about all of this is that ASAP Rocky was not even the aggressor in the room. Rocky spent most of his interview talking about pain. That's the piece the highlight clips keep leaving out. He talked about ASAP Yams, his brother, his co-founder, his visionary, who is no longer here to see any of this unfold. He talked about ASAP Bari, the trial, the courtroom, the moment he realized someone he considered family was testifying in a way that could have put him behind bars for 24 years. Rocky said the words, I would have been dead, and the whole studio went quiet. 24 years. That's not a beef bar. That's not a punchline. That's a father of 2 who almost lost the ability to raise his own kids because someone in his own crew, allegedly, stepped on the stand in a way that Rocky is still processing to this day. And then Rocky did something that 99 out of 100 rappers in his position would never do. He named the pain of losing ASAP Ferg. He said it plainly. He said Ferg dropping the ASAP name, the day after Yams Day, the day before Rocky's trial, was one of the hardest gut punches of his career. He said he helped Ferg get out of his old deal. He said he helped Ferg build the belts, the t-shirts, the visuals. He said Ferg's best friend Jay West lived a few blocks from where they were sitting. He said, in his own words, that he never treated any of those brothers like an employee, that he was never their boss, that he was their brother. And then he said the words that made half the culture reach for their phones. For Ferg to do that interview the day after Yams Day and drop the name, that felt like sucker S. Door kicked wide. Because the receipts back him up. Look at Apple Music today. Look at Spotify today. Look at Instagram today. ASAP Ferg is still ASAP Ferg on every single platform. Every single one. Which means Rocky is not making it up. Which means Ferg's public denouncement of the crew was a headline move, not a real move. And it landed on the exact worst week Rocky could have possibly received it. Now let's zoom back out to the Drake of it all, because that's the piece that's going to keep this video pumping through the algorithm for the next 6 weeks. When Jason Lee brought up F in Problems, the record that put Rocky, Kendrick, Drake, and 2 Chainz on the same track, Rocky did what only he could do. He praised everyone in the room. He gave 2 Chainz his flowers. He said 2 Chainz had a stranglehold on hip-hop for 3 straight summers. He said Kendrick was one of his favorite rappers alive. He named the black leather pants era. He named the armlets. He named the fashion. And then he dropped the line that historians are going to quote for the next 20 years, that the Grammys and the MTV VMAs snubbed him, snubbed Kendrick, snubbed Drake, and snubbed 2 Chainz that year in favor of Macklemore. He said it was politics. He said it was because Macklemore was white. He said it plainly, calmly, without theatrics. And then he made a joke that made Jason Lee dive for cover on the couch. But behind the joke was a very serious point. The industry has been doing this for decades, and Rocky just named the receipt in high definition. Sweetheart, this is the moment I want you to pause and think, because the next piece is the piece that ties everything together. Jason Lee asked Rocky, straight up, out of Kendrick and Drake, who was the in problem in that beef? And Rocky, with the same grin, said, that wasn't a beef. That was a battle. Not like us wasn't a beef. That was a straight-up AR-15 scope. That was homicide. That was a kill switch. Cold, cold, unreal. Rocky just, in one sentence, ratified the entire cultural verdict on the Kendrick-Drake war without ever sounding like a hater. He kept his hands clean. He kept his tone measured. He complimented Kendrick's craft. But he did not, and this is the important part, he did not pretend the outcome was ambiguous. He called it homicide. On camera. In 2026. And Drake has still not responded. And this is where the smear campaign piece re-enters the story, because whispers out the block are getting louder by the hour. There is a very specific pattern being tracked online right now. A pattern of anonymous websites appearing during major hip-hop moments, filled with old clips, cherry-picked screenshots, and rehashed narratives designed to reshape a rapper's image while the algorithm is still hot. That website that appeared during the Kendrick War 2 years ago, gone. That site that popped up around Grand Wizard Chat Asian, gone. The URL still exists, but if you type it into your browser today, you get a completely different landing page that has nothing to do with the original allegations. Talk in the Trenches is saying somebody has been paying to keep these sites alive during the storm and paying to delete them when the storm passes. And Rocky, on that couch, described that exact behavior, without naming names, without breaking any lawyer's rule, without saying anything that could be sued for defamation. He described it like a scientist describes weather. Now I need y'all locked in for this next section, because this is where the story gets bigger than Rocky, bigger than Drake, and bigger than Rihanna. This is where it becomes a story about how modern hip-hop journalism has been quietly hijacked. Those big-name hip-hop pages you follow on Instagram, the ones with the blue checks, the ones with the 300,000 follower counts, the ones that repost every rumor within 9 minutes of it hitting the timeline. Those pages are not eating off their ad revenue. Do the math. A blue check page pulling 200 million views a month is cashing out around $400 from platform monetization. $400. That's not rent. That's not a payroll. That's not a media empire. So where is the real money coming from? By the paperwork floating around, those pages are being fed. Fed content. Fed narratives. Fed sponsorships from brands nobody's checking on. Fed prediction market promos. Fed steak advertisements. Fed watch drops. Fed cologne launches. And, allegedly, Fed talking points on which rapper to elevate and which rapper to bury during any given news week. That is the machine Rocky described, and every single word of it lines up with what industry insiders have been screaming into the void for the last 5 years. Let me hit you with a specific example, because I know somebody in the comments is going to ask for one. Remember the Not Like Us run? Remember how, at the peak of that war, an entire website appeared out of nowhere trying to rehash the old and proven allegations about Kendrick and his fiancée? A whole website. Not a tweet, not a Reddit thread, a domain, a logo, a layout, a team of writers. That thing had a budget. Somebody paid for that. And to this day, nobody has claimed responsibility for who commissioned it. Rocky sat on that couch and said, plainly, that these types of covert operations are not organic. He said the internet is a firepower now, an anonymous, plausibly deniable firepower, and certain rappers are using it in ways the culture has never seen before. He didn't name names. He didn't have to. The names are in the receipts. And now, because this is the part the Drake fans are going to hate, we have to talk about the lawsuit. Because Rocky brought it up too. Not directly, but with the kind of surgical language that only somebody who has spent a decade in courtrooms can deploy. In the middle of the Kendrick War, Drake filed a legal action that a lot of casuals scrolled past. Buried inside that filing was a request for criminal charges. Not just civil damages. Criminal. Drake's team tried to argue that Kendrick was using his lyrics, the wop 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 cadences, the bum 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 hooks, as coded instructions to direct violence toward Drake. They tried to argue that Kendrick was scamming the public. Cousin, that is not a normal legal move. That is not a normal beef response. That is a level of legal escalation the culture has never seen from any rapper. Not Nas, not Jay, not Biggie, not Pac, not Meek, not Pusha. Nobody. Drake pushed the button. And when Rocky sat on that couch and reminded everybody that this is the same man who raps about twisting fingers, the entire subtext of the interview clicked into place. Drake wants the Tough Guy album cover, but he keeps sending the paperwork. Moving on though, because Rihanna deserves a full paragraph, I need y'all to understand what her Instagram story did to the algorithm this week. Rihanna, whether she meant to or not, single-handedly reset the entire pop culture news cycle. In one post, in one caption, in 4 words. My ex in the studio. A man in the background, half-turned, pretending not to look. A saxophone playing over her hips. A location tag from Barbados. That single Instagram story reached more homes than any album Drake has dropped in the last 18 months, and it didn't cost her a marketing budget, a music video, a rollout, a press tour, or a single feature. It cost her 12 seconds of her time. 12 seconds. And Drake responded, allegedly, according to whispers out the block, by walking back into the studio and cutting another song about her. His 4th album of the year. Which, respectfully, nobody is asking for. Cousin, that is the machine Rocky described. That is the loop. That is the wheel that never stops spinning. And that is exactly why the culture is done being polite about it. Let's slow down for a second and give Rocky his flowers on the piece that most people are going to miss, because the highlight clip economy is going to gloss right over this. Rocky did not attach himself to Kendrick's fight. He didn't. He was very deliberate about that. He said, and I want you to hear this clearly, that his issue with Drake is his issue with Drake. It has nothing to do with Kendrick. It has nothing to do with Not Like Us. It has nothing to do with any of the ghostwriting allegations. Rocky's problem starts and ends with Drake making Rihanna a character in his catalog for a decade, and, allegedly, financing the online machinery that has been trying to reframe Rocky as a footnote in a story about a woman who chose him. That is a very specific, very targeted grievance, and Rocky protected it from being watered down by the wider culture war. That kind of clarity is rare in a 2-hour sit-down, and it is one of the reasons the interview is going to age better than most of Drake's last 3 albums. Now I want to zoom in on one line, because this line is going to be the tattoo of the whole conversation. When Jason Lee kept pressing Rocky about the took his girl narrative, Rocky finally said, "It's weird that everybody has moved on with their lives, and this dude is still strung up on it." Say that again, slower. It is weird. That word is doing so much heavy lifting in that sentence. Rocky didn't say corny. He didn't say sad. He didn't say pathetic. He said weird. And weird, in 2026 hip-hop culture, is the nuclear option, because weird is the one word you cannot recover from. Once the culture calls you weird, the culture is done with you. And Rocky put weird on Drake's forehead in front of 2 hours of national television without ever raising his voice. Let's talk about the ASAP crew one more time, because this is the softest, most human part of the interview, and I don't want the algorithm to eat it. Rocky described the origin of ASAP with a level of detail that only somebody who lived it could reconstruct. He described the Gap shirts. He described the first photo shoots. He described the $50 chip-ins. He described putting ASAP in front of everybody's name. Rocky, Yams, Ferg, Nast, 12e, Aunt Barry, every single one of them. He said he was the capitalist of the crew, the one who saw the business first, the one who monetized the aesthetic. Now, and this is the piece where I have to be honest with y'all, some longtime ASAP historians are pushing back a little on this framing. A lot of the culture remembers ASAP Yams as the true visionary, the one who saw the sound before anybody else, the one who curated the mood board, the one who understood the internet in a way that shaped the entire late 2010s aesthetic. Rocky did not erase Yams. Rocky mentioned Yams multiple times, but some longtime observers are saying Rocky might be slightly reweighing the credit distribution in his own favor. And, cousin, that is a fair critique. But even if you take a modest slice of credit off Rocky's plate, what's left is still enormous. He directed the videos, he shaped the fashion, he pushed the sound, he opened the doors for a generation. Rocky is not overstating his role by much. He might just be softening the shadow of the brother he lost. And this, right here, is why the Ferg piece hits so hard. Because if you understand how deep the ASAP brotherhood ran, you understand why Ferg dropping the name the day after Yams Day felt like a knife. Yams Day is sacred to the crew. It is not a promotional holiday. It is not a marketing anniversary. It is the memorial for the founder they buried too soon. And for Ferg to schedule his public dissociation on that exact week, right before Rocky's federal trial, is the kind of thing you cannot undo with a text message. Rocky said, on that couch, that he holds no bad blood toward Ferg. He said they could hash it out any day. He said he still loves Ferg. But he also said, plainly, that Ferg never stabbed him in the back, too crazy or nothing like that, which is a very specific piece of grading. Rocky is telling us the wound is real, but the door is still cracked open. That is emotional intelligence most rappers do not have on tape. Now brace yourself, because this is the part where we have to talk about Barry. Rocky said the trial almost killed him. Not metaphorically. Literally. He said if he had lost that trial, he would have done 24 years, and that means he would have missed his children entirely. Riot growing up without a father, RZA growing up without a father. Rocky said, in that room, I would have been dead. He said Bari testifying on the stand felt like a nightmare he could not wake up from. And when Jason Lee asked him if he could ever forgive Bari, Rocky did not perform for the camera. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He said, maybe, if you have a heart, you can forgive. That is a grown man wrestling with a wound in real time. That is not a soundbite. That is a father processing a betrayal on camera. And every single podcaster who is about to make a reaction video about this interview